Hello, and welcome to our presentation. I am Dr. Rebecca Jez from the University of San Diego, and this is...
Hi, I'm Lauren Ramers. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of San Diego.
So both of us work together on the Academy of Catholic Teaching, which is part of the University Consortium on Catholic Education, which is a national group of universities that work together to prepare students for, teachers for working in Catholic schools. So one of the things that we have done over the years is think about how we can kind of expand and gain knowledge from other universities. And so a few years ago, the Loyola Marymount University and Loyola Chicago and myself from University of San Diego got together and thought, how can we really start bringing attention to inclusive practices in schools. And from these conversations, actually at NCEA, we eventually, over the years, built the idea of creating a conference that would really address inclusive programs, not just teaching programs, but mental health and leadership and family involvement in Catholic schools that really focused on inclusive practices. And it is happening. So we have it happening on April 8th and 9th. The theme of the conference is we have the statement at the urging of Pope Francis. We're called to reach to the margins. In an effort to answer this call, Catholic schools are increasing programming options to serve diverse learners and their families. Catholic educators continue to search for new evidence-based practices that can meet these needs in more just and merciful ways. This conference is going to be hosted at the University of San Diego. And the planning and support has been done with Loyola Marymount University and the Diocese of San Diego. So the conference objectives are first to define inclusion. We really wanted to understand what is inclusion, how are different people defining it. When we talk about inclusion, sometimes we're talking about disability or differing abilities. Sometimes we're talking about including families with who are multilingual. Maybe we're talking about the inclusion of LGBTQX communities. And so there's a lot of different ways that people are looking at inclusion. And so we really wanted to kind of unpack what that meant through this conference. We wanted to look at the different context. So what types of schools or programs are looking at this work differently? What practices are being used to define inclusion and promote inclusion in classrooms and schools? And then we wanted to call out the Catholic social teaching in the bishop's letter, which were really clear on inclusion being a part of the Catholic community and how that would look. In the more academic and behavioral, social, emotional realm, we wanted to frame multi-tiered systems of support. The bishops said that funding should never be an issue. And so we wanted to look, okay, well, if we weren't looking at funding sources, how can we make sure that we're creating welcoming environments? And then finally, that this needs to have a paradigm shift, not only in the training and support, but also in just the buy-in for schools. The third focus of the conference was to highlight some of the inclusive programs and practices that are already happening in Catholic K-12 schools. There's some amazing things, and we are very lucky to have been able to include and showcase some of these programs.
There are several outcomes of the conference. We are hoping that attendees will be able to make a case for inclusion and inclusive practices within their setting using the Catholic social teaching and bishop's letters. 2, we hope that they will identify and practice evidence-based practices in serving students with diverse needs in Catholic schools. So really that there is a focus on bringing back the information and making change to increase inclusivity at the schools. Attendees will be able to identify policies, procedures, and protocols that build systematic MTSS approaches to serve all learners, families, and communities within the Catholic schools. And finally, to learn approaches for accessing and working collaboratively with public schools and outside agencies in supporting learners with diverse needs in Catholic schools. Here's the conference schedule. We'll all be gathering on campus at the University of San Diego on Friday, April 8th. And we'll listen to a wonderful keynote lecture and have a reception. And then the following morning after registration, we'll hear another welcome and keynote speech, and then we'll move into breakout sessions. Following the breakout sessions, there will be a poster and program showcase. And then the real highlight, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, will be a World Cafe. And this will be a whole conference discussion where we really hone in on hoping to define inclusion in TK through 12 Catholic schools. That World Cafe will be followed by another keynote luncheon, and then we'll move back into breakout sessions. A little bit later in this presentation, we're going to talk about what comprises those breakout sessions and the different strands. And then we'll come back for a convening World Cafe where we'll frame inclusive practices to support students and families. And then at the conclusion of that, we will hear a closing keynote, and that will be the end of our conference. So as you saw in the schedule, the structure of the conference is made up of keynotes, breakout sessions that are for two different groups. There'll be breakout sessions that are available and designed for teachers, practitioners, and resource specialists. And then there'll be breakout sessions designed for leaders, administration, diocesan leadership, and pastors. There'll be a poster session, and that will showcase the schools and the various inclusive programs that they're already supporting. And then, of course, the key feature of the conference being the World Cafe, which will be facilitated dialogues around these special topics so that we can further our understanding about the information that we're gathering in our breakout sessions and during the keynotes to really hone in on our individuals' experiences and then what we can take back to our sites. So there will be 2 rounds, as you saw in the conference schedule, of World Cafe. Each discussion, each World Cafe session will have facilitators at the tables, and the conversations will be facilitated by these hosts. Round 1 is where we're going to define inclusion with some such questions as what is inclusion? How do we define inclusion within different contexts? What practices are at play? And how do we integrate Catholic social teaching and the bishop's letter? Then once we have a normed definition of inclusion and we have a common understanding, we'll move into round 2 of the World Cafe. This is around framing multi-tiered systems of support and its implementation. So this conversation is going to be geared towards how do we look beyond funding to ensure that all are welcome. We're going to discuss the paradigm shift to increase training and support.
This is a word cloud where we took all of the titles and the abstracts from the conference sessions, and you can see that this is really focused around students. And I love that students, Catholic, and schools are the biggest one. That is really where our focus is how can we support these students using inclusive school programs, support, inclusion, learning, and other opportunities. And so I thought this was a really nice visual to show some of the work that we'll be doing. Some of the practitioners' themes. So these are the breakout groups. And so we have, breakout groups or breakout sessions and poster sessions that will talk about inclusive practices. Here's just a little taste of some of those practices, restorative justice, executive functioning, social emotional learning, inclusive strategies, universal design for learning, differentiation and assessment. Really looking at supporting specific learners, like learners who have dyslexia or are in multilingual programs. And then the inclusive administrative support. So how do we look at admission strategies? How do we create libraries and books to promote inclusion? How do we facilitate difficult conversations about race and DEI? Around the leadership themes, some of the big ones that came out are inclusive practices in administration, once again, hiring, admission, professional development, book clubs, and how do we support learners and families? So that could be with students and families, multilingual learners, students with disabilities, different behavioral supports. Supports of teachers. So this is around strategies and practices and dispositions. And then inclusive strategies, once again, those restorative justice strategies, the reconciliation, the academic supports, and really building community.
Such a variety of workshops. It's really just amazing.
And as we mentioned in our third objective, we really wanted to highlight some of these amazing programs that are happening already in schools. So we have different university programs. One we'll be highlighting the University Consortium on Catholic Education and the Catholic Institute for Mental Health Ministry. In the TK programs, we've got a school that will be talking about their multi-tiered systems of support. In K-8, we've got a junior high that's focused on college and career readiness. We have a learning resource center that looks at K-5 book club programs and learning resource classes. And then we also have some curricular programs. Loyola Press is going to be talking about SEL. We've got inclusive curriculum. We have Frenzy, who will be talking about social emotional learning. And then we also have some curricular programs on multilingual learners. So it's very exciting. Here are some of the references for how we thought about creating this program. So these are some different articles that might be interesting to take a look at to really understand how this work is being done and framed. And we'd like to say thank you. Here's our contact information if you would like to learn more. And thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much.